Alright guys, first of my videos here, so let's give this a shot. My best suggestion to you is wait and hear what I have to say about the subject, then pause the video to give yourself time to take the notes. Alright, let's get started. Civil liberties. So what are these things? People are always talking about how they know their rights, but unfortunately most of the time that's not true. For instance, many people don't even know the difference between civil liberties and civil rights. Civil rights is next week, so let's focus in on the civil liberties part. This is the rights that you have that are protected from government action. So, nice little cartoon over here. Please remove any remaining civil liberties and place them in the tracer. This kind of just shows you that while you have your civil liberties, these things can be forfeited, as we see all the time, like if you want to get on an airplane. Where these things are located, most of them are in the Bill of Rights, but there are a few in the Constitution itself, and we're going to address that here shortly. Okay, civil liberties in the Constitution. These mostly come from Article 1. The three big ones are habeas corpus, or the Great Writ, the protection from bills of attainder, protection from ex post facto laws as well. So, what is habeas corpus? Well, that is your right to be brought before a judge and notified of the crimes being brought against you. You see this in movies, you see it in TV, you get arrested, they wait, they see the judge notifies you of the criminal charges being brought against you, and you get a chance to enter in a plea, guilty, not guilty. From that point on, the judge will either decide to release you or keep you detained, and if they do release you, it might be with bail. So, bills of the writ of the Great Writ or habeas corpus. The cartoon over here, as you see, you've got the boundary of the U.S. Constitution, the protection of habeas corpus, and during George Bush's presidency, much deliberation was made of Gitmo, which was where we keep all the terrorists over in Cuba, our military base over in Cuba. None of these individuals have been brought before a judge. None of them have been told the crimes against them and are being detained regardless, which would be a violation of habeas corpus. The question is, does the U.S. Constitution's protections of habeas corpus apply to non-citizens and individuals who are being imprisoned as essentially prisoners of war? Now, get back here. Now, protections from bills of attainder. Similar concept, except this is actually being found guilty without a trial. All right, we don't allow that in this country. Hence, the protections from bills of attainder. Protection from ex post facto laws. This is essentially telling you that if you did something that was not against the law when you did it, and then a law is passed that makes that action illegal, you cannot be punished for committing that action when it was not a crime. So, if you pick your nose, and then the next day they pass a law saying picking your nose is forbidden and you get 10 years in prison. Well, they got video of you picking your nose the day before. They can't punish you for picking your nose the day before because it wasn't a crime when you did it. Selective incorporation. A lot of people don't quite realize that the civil liberties originally only applied to the protections against the federal government, not against one's own state government. It's been a kind of a long, drawn-out process with case by case by case that has extended the civil liberties of the Bill of Rights to the states as well. So the states have to respect those things. In fact, in 2019, in January, the courts actually extended another civil liberty, which I'll talk about later, that the states now have to follow as well. All right, so selective incorporation, the process of applying portions of the Bill of Rights to the states. Originally, after the case of Barron v. Baltimore, the question was, does the Bill of Rights apply to state government actions? And the decision was, no, it does not. The language of the Bill of Rights only applied to the federal government and not the states. This all changed after the Civil War with the Reconstruction Amendment, the 14th Amendment. Because there's a part of that amendment called the Due Process Clause. And with Gitlow versus New York, which is one of your foundational court cases, you must know this. And I apologize, I didn't put the date next to it, but you can see over here it's 1925. Barron versus Baltimore, I believe, occurred in 1833, if memory serves. So quite a long time in between. After Gitlow versus New York, there was an individual, Gitlow, who broke a New York law. And this law was he was advocating for a communist government and overthrowing the U.S. government. This was against New York's laws. And so he was arrested and imprisoned and found guilty. The question was this a violation of his free speech? Gitlow argued his First Amendment free speech was being violated, while the New York government was arguing that the First Amendment does not apply to the state of New York. It only applied to the federal government violating individuals' free speech rights. Ultimately, the court's decision was that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment incorporates free speech to the states. Because of the 14th Amendment and its Due Process Clause, states now have to respect this civil liberty, and it created the selective incorporation doctrine. All right, so very, very important to understand that this concept, the selective incorporation, is when a issue is brought to the Supreme Court regarding whether or not a state must respect one of these civil liberties from the Bill of Rights, or if it only applies to the federal government. And time again, we are seeing the courts apply the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to extend that civil liberty to the states. For instance, the one that most recently happened deals with excessive fines. The federal government has there's a protection against the federal government with the 8th Amendment saying that the government cannot fine you for a crime excessively, which is it's kind of like a financial, cruel, and unusual punishment, if you were. And states were not held to that standard because of the language of the Bill of Rights. But recently a court case has gone through, and that court case ultimately decided that states, because of the Due Process Clause, cannot use excessive fines when punishing somebody for a crime. Okay, you have a little cartoon here. You see the Supreme Court using the sponge, which is the Due Process Clause, to soak up the Bill of Rights, and they're applying it. They're squeezing out all those Bill of Rights drop by drop by drop into the state and local governments. All thanks to Gitlow versus New York. So very important case to understand. It created the selective incorporation doctrine using the Due Process Clause. Two most important things to remember from this court case.